everyone. I hope you all had a relaxing night and that you're joining us with plenty of energy for this second day of our 2021 SolarPower Summit, which is 100% dedicated to driving sustainable change. I am Aurélie Beauvais, Deputy CEO of SolarPower Europe, and it is my pleasure to be your host for today. Before I walk you through the exciting topics of this second day, let me touch upon some of the key highlights from yesterday. Achieving climate neutrality even before 2050 will not be an easy ride, and it will first require the right level of ambition. But what does that mean? What are the expectations from the youth, the industry, and our key policymakers? How to achieve this? Yesterday, our CEO Walburga Hemmetsberger fleshed out these important questions with, amongst others, Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans and the youth leader Cassia Morales. Secondly, driving sustainable change requires cooperation, a complete mobilization of all sectors of our economy to join forces and accelerate the transition. Our CEO sparked a lively debate with major EU energy and industrial associations on how our sectors can jointly support each other in reaching this critical ambition. Now, today's program is also full of ambition to explore other dimensions of how solar can drive sustainable change. We will start the day with a session on solar manufacturing, which will investigate how deploying solar can contribute to reviving Europe's industrial and manufacturing activities, and what is needed to ensure that we can become global leaders in cutting-edge solar technologies. After a much-deserved wellness and mindful break, our CEO Walburga Hemmetsberger will dig further into the opportunities and challenges of driving sustainable change, with an executive interview featuring our President Aristotelis Chantavas and the Greek Minister of Energy and Environment, Mr. Kostas Skrekas, which is joining us from Athens. Right before lunch, stay tuned for our session on Solar for Agriculture, exploring the potential of agri-solar businesses to power a more sustainable and modern EU agricultural sector. The session will also host the launch of our first ever agri-solar best practices report, and we are very proud of this. After the lunch break, you will have enough time to join us for the Solar for Business session, which is shedding light on how solar energy can support the competitiveness of EU businesses and deliver on green growth, notably through corporate renewable PPAs and on-site self-consumption. Now, when it comes to greening our businesses, our next session on Solar for Hydrogen will explore how renewable hydrogen and derived e-fuels can support the decarbonization of hard-to-abate sectors, such as heavy industry, aviation, or shipping, which are often hard to electrify and very energy-intensive. It will also flesh out what is needed to make renewable hydrogen a true European industrial success story. Finally, and to close this exciting day, do not miss our 2021 Solar Startup Award, which will showcase and reward innovative projects and companies driving change with their intelligence, creativity, and energy. I have already spoken too much, so let the show begin. For this first session on Solar4Manufacturing, it is my great pleasure to hand things over to our executive advisor, Head of Market Intelligence and Solar Geek, our very own Michael Schmela. Michael, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. As the prelude to our Solar for Manufacturing panel, we have invited Jutta Trube. She's the head of the PV chapter of VDMA, the German Mechanical Engineering Industry Association, which is actually the largest industrial association in Europe with over 3,300 members. And it is also the voice of the German production equipment industry. For many years, an important pillar in advancing manufacturing of solar, wafers, cells, modules, and other equipment. VDMA is also the publisher of the International Roadmap for PV, globally known as the compass for technology development in silicon to module manufacturing. I would like to talk now for a couple of minutes to Jutta about her view on the need for solar manufacturing renaissance in Europe, and the time solar is increasingly turning into the main pillar for the energy transition on our continent. Jutta, why does VDMA think Europe needs its own and substantial solar production industry along the solar value chain?
First of all, thank you very much, Michael, to give me this possibility for this discussion today. And I think the reason is that solar will be by far the largest contributor to the European energy mix in the future, as shown by several publications. For example, in your own publication, where you focused on the 100% renewable energy Europe report. So from an economic and geostrategic point of view, we need a significant part of solar modules, including cells, for the installation here in Europe, also being manufactured here in Europe. Our still excellent companies producing PV manufacturing equipment and members of the VDMA will, of course, support that strategy. Today, nearly 100% of the solar cells are imported to Europe, and nearly every small portion of a very small portion of the solar modules are produced here.
Okay, so we have several international solar manufacturing leaders across the value chain. We talk about inverters and many other areas. But if we look at wafers, ingots, and cells, there's not so much in Europe these days, at least when we talk about real leadership. So why do you believe new European wafer to cell and also module manufacturers have really a chance on a global level at the time we're seeing gigantic expansions among Chinese manufacturers?
At the moment, we see clearly a demand here in Europe. So the market is growing, and we see that we have the strong R&D and as well as the equipment manufacturers, which are still leaders in the moment. So we would like to use them to push also for a production here in Europe.
Okay, and talking costs, you recently published a report on cost competitiveness in solar manufacturing. So what's the best technology strategy for us here in Europe?
For the cost, we see that, if we have a smart fab, as we promoted, and with a smart fab concept, you have an automatic and controlled production. And this will enable us to produce at competitive costs due to the high yields and to continuously improvements. So with Industry 4.0, where, European companies are still in a leadership worldwide, we are able to really push this on an economic and ecologic situation.
Okay, so talking now a little bit about the broader environment. So end of April, you just published the 12th edition of the International Technology Roadmap for PV, ITR PV in short. So what are the main trends you identified on the wafer to module technology side?
At the moment, we see that the wafer formats will become bigger and bigger. And so from the, at the moment, mainstream of 166 millimeters in square, we will range through maybe 182 up to 210 millimeters in square. And these large wafers then will be the basis of the higher power on the modules. But this needs to be cut in half or third, the wafers, to really get the power out. And so we're ranging also to very high power modules. And this is especially for the power applications. We see that this will go to module sizes up to 3 square meters and maybe even more. And we will end up with modules which have 600 watt peak and even more in the future, especially for this power applications. Of course, on roof applications, this will be limited by weight and size, because you have to handle this manually to the rooftops. But this is the direction for the modules. And of course, if you have a look to the efficiency values of all this high technology things, we see that the values are come very close. So if it's heterojunction or it's IBC or others. And of course, we see that also the tandems will come in the near future. So for 2023, we see that the tandems will come into mass production. And this will be, of course, the highest efficiency on the technology.
Okay, so we see higher efficiencies, more powerful modules, larger modules, and also new cell technologies over the next few years coming up. So what does it mean for the European solar manufacturing industry in terms of positions? So where do we find our place to be able to compete?
I think from the European manufacturers, we are still, say, in a leading edge at the moment from the manufacturing side, but also from the research institutes, companies, institutes. We are, say, in a leading edge. But if we don't, say, push soon for a mass production here in Europe, say, on the long run, our leadership will be, gone. So we need to have a large-scale wafer module, cell module technology here in Europe with the production on site.
Okay, so we have all the ingredients here in Europe. We have the research institutes, we have the right startups, we have the players, and everything is ready basically. The industry has made its homework, we can almost say. We can really say so. But what's the key now to unleash large volume solar manufacturing and across the value chain in Europe?
I think the key really, it's all about the financing. We need the entrepreneurs need really a domestic development bank and to help them to take the risks and to back them, as we see this now in China and also starting in India, but also about in US, you see that with the Biden administration. So all these countries, say, backing the industry with the finance. And as you just said, the solar industry is ready now here in Europe. But now it is about the politicians in EU and also in the national areas to understand the dimension, what we will have with the European solar manufacturing here in Europe. And this is the key for the future high-tech jobs we can build on them, and also on the long-term energy independence here for Europe. So we won't be that dependent on the energy as if we don't do this now.
Thanks, Jutta. I think we fully agree from SolarPower Europe.
Thank you very much.
Good morning on day 2 of our SolarPower Summit. Today we start with a topic to which we currently devote a large portion of our work, and this is Solar4Manufacturing. While the European solar market has shown a surprising resilience to the COVID-19 pandemic, increasing by double digits to a level that marks the second best ever in EU Solar's history last year, and it will only continue to grow, as we assume, we are also seeing activities now more and more on the European manufacturing side, although this volume is much lower at the moment. We would like to discuss in the next 45 minutes Quo Vadis Solar4Manufacturing in the EU. In these 45 minutes, we will have first the European Commission representative providing a keynote and then discussing with her and 3 executives of leading European solar companies the status and outlook for solar manufacturing in Europe. Let me just briefly introduce our 4 distinguished guests. So first, it's an honor for us to have with us Kerstin Jorna, who's the Director General of DG Grow. Before she took that job in April 2020, she was Deputy Director General at DG Economic and Financial Affairs, short ECFIN. Kerstin Jorna's career at the European Commission spans for over 30 years with different jobs and responsibilities in various DGs, some of which also touched the energy and the transport sector. Thanks, Kerstin, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're also very glad to have with us Dr. Christian Westermeyer, who's the Vice President, Marketing and Sales and Application Engineering at leading silicon manufacturer Wacker Chemie AG, where he works for over 23 years. He was also president of SolarPower Europe, is now a board member and vice president, and he's also the chairman of our industrial strategy stream. Welcome, Christian. It's very wonderful to have with us Gunther Airfort, who has more than 20 years experience in the solar sector, working in Germany, the US, and Switzerland. Since 2020, he's Chief Executive Officer of Meyer Burger, which once was a world-leading PV wafer cell and module production equipment manufacturer, and that is turning, as we speak, into a solar cell and module manufacturer in Germany. Welcome, Gunther.
Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here.
I'm also very happy to have with us Eduardo De Santis, who's the Chief Strategy Officer at Soltec, Europe's leading solar tracker manufacturer, who has more than 15 years of international experience in the solar industry as a sales engineer, project manager, and project engineer. Eduardo, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start first with Kerstin's keynote. She will show us what's the European Commission's vision on Solar4Manufacturing, and after that we will base our discussion on her input speech. Kerstin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for inviting me. We just published last week, we published the industrial strategy in the update of the industrial strategy. And there are 2 chapters in this strategy which are very relevant to our discussions today. The first is on the green business case and the question how we can decarbonize actually our industry and the way our companies are working and producing. And the second is about strategic dependencies and how we can improve the relative position of European value chains for sectors that are really relevant to our to our single market economy. And the decarbonization aspect is a core part in it. Now, if I would say in one sentence, what's the role of the solar industry in this? I think it's the solar industry shines the light on the green business case. I would like to make three types of comments. The first is, where do we stand today? The second is really, what does the future hold for your industry in Europe? And the third is, how can the EU support this endeavor? Now, where do we stand today is, and this is kind of detailed also in our update in the industrial strategy, we think that we will have to double the electricity. The electricity demand is going to double between now and 2050. And of course, it's not about electricity as such. It will be about decarbonized electricity, because that's what our industries, starting with steel, chemicals, need in order to decarbonize their industry, their way of producing. What we are looking at is, in our projections, that we would, by 2030, we would have roughly 70% decarbonized energy, renewable energy, and in 2050, around 80+ percent of decarbonized energy. This in itself, and that's also explained in the update, will change our industrial geography, because industry tends to be where the energy is. And today, industry, you will find strong industry clusters, for example, where coal is. In the future, when we harvest these new types of energy, wind, sun, we will have to be where we can harvest them. And then there is an issue about transport, storage, getting it actually to the factory gates. And the whole debate that we have about hydrogen at the moment shows these changes in the industrial geography and how we have to deal with it. So it's not only about harvesting renewable energy, it's also getting it to where it's needed. Now, what does the future hold for your industry? What we are predicting is there will be 20 times more global demand for solar panels in the future, because solar is the one energy source that seems so, unexhaustible. Now, what we see is that the production and the installation of solar panels in Europe between today and 2030 is going to double, and between 2030 and 2050, it's going to triple. Now, so there is a case for more production and more demand. It's not about shifting production from one place to another, just the cake is being bigger, and that's where we have to position ourselves. If I look at the solar panel value chain, it's a complex value chain, and all of you know much more about this than I do. But what I see is that we are good on deployment, inverter manufacture, and solar trackers. We are not so good yet. We lost ground on this on cells and modules, where the 10 top producers are in Asia. But there is the prospect of new uses, which, for example, the renovation waste shows, and some, you may have seen one regional government in Germany announcing that every new house would have to be equipped with solar panels. So that's the prospect, which actually looks quite bright. Now, when I come to the EU support, I'd like to make some little subgroups. The first is predictability of where the policy goes. If you look around the world, Europe is the most advanced in giving that framework, which is very important for investors to come in, because we have the Green Deal strategy, we have the Green Deal investment ban, we have the industrial strategy, and we will have the climate law package in June. So when it comes to predictability, is it worthwhile investing? Europe is the most advanced. The second element, important also from an investment point of view, is the regulatory targets and tools. We will come with the renewable package, the package on the implementing the climate law still before the summer. And one important element of that will be the renewable energy directive, where we're looking at the moment how best to frame new business models like the power purchase agreements, which is a new way of securing investment and securing that the new supply of renewables immediately meets a new demand for that type of energy, and to make sure that that demand can also be met through transport or storage. We are looking at standards, a number of, in particular, the newer developments in your industry, which is integrated panels and functions. What will be, so we are agile enough to have the new standards immediately on these. And and then there's also the work we're doing on the eco design directive, looking at defining, like we did for batteries, how to decarbonize the production of solar panels as well, which in the long run will be, we believe, a competitive advantage. And again, I'm interested in hearing your views on this. And then, of course, money is not everything, but it helps. So when I look at money, we need to look at EU money, national money, private money, and we are supporting channeling all three types of money towards your sector. When I look at EU money, we have a number of the Connecting Europe facility, for example, and other energy supporting programs. We have Horizon program with the whole Horizon Europe, which helps the development and innovation. When I look at the EU budget, I also see InvestEU, which was my previous job, is to guarantee, to work with partners to take part of the risk. I mean, the areas that you will be investing in, for example, new technologies on integrated panels, they are very risky from the point of view of an investor. So if the EU takes part of the risk through the guarantees, that will make the project more attractive for other investors to come in. And as you know, InvestEU is rolled out with the European Investment Bank, who has a very strong climate policy. 50% of their interventions are to be green, as laid down in the recent lending policy. But we also work with big national promotional banks, who all are starting to move into this area. So much for the EU budget. I already touched that also national budgets, national promotional banks come into play. National budgets, if we look at the recovery and resilience facility and the plans that member states have put in, we see 18 actually plans that are planning specific projects in the area of renewables, including solar. So that's a very good start. And these projects, and we will need projects. Member states will need the projects to be ready because they don't have a long time. They only have 3 years to kind of invest. And it's important that you as an industry are there at that stage. And then the last point on private money, so private investment, Europe is setting the gold standard with a taxonomy about sustainable investment. And this will have a big pull effect for investments, private investments to coming in, private investments looking for projects. And again, here, the readiness to have the projects is key. Because with all that money around, it doesn't do a thing if you don't have the projects. And I would hope that in our meeting today also, we will be able to showcase some of your very innovative projects that need scale to be rolled out. And that's where I would end my intervention here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. So let me just take once again from our side also the view on solar. I understood that the Commission is seeing the potential. What we're always seeing, and that's actually with many actors in the segment, in the energy segment, that basically when people look at solar, they are actually way too conservative. In hindsight, we've always seen that the sector was growing much faster than actually what was forecasted. So probably I think hardly anyone would have foreseen that even last year solar installed more generation capacities in Europe than any other in other power generation technology, and even twice as much as the second largest generation technology that were our friends from wind. And we forecast, for example, and probably that's also too conservative, that demand in the EU will grow from this 18 gigawatt last year already to 35 gigawatt in 2024. So that means in these little amount of time, we think that demand will already double. So, but on the other hand, when we did some modeling recently, we published a 100% Renewable Europe study. And so we modeled different scenarios. And if we look at the scenarios we would need in order to meet our decarbonization targets in the EU by 2050 and also meet the Paris climate targets, we would need almost, depending on which model you look, 7 terawatt of solar installed by 2050. and that's a moderate scenario. So that means actually it's huge what we have to do, and we have to get to completely different dimensions. So what I would like to have first is have the representatives of the industry simply say how is the status of manufacturing projects along the value chain for cells and modules. Maybe let's first start with Meyer Burger, which has decided to invest in its own manufacturing. And so how are things going for you, Gunther?
So we will be opening our new most modern 2 factories in this month of May. First starting with the cell factory that is being opened on May the 18th and the module factory on the 26th. Capacity-wise, it's both 400 megawatts only, I have to say. So that's a drop in the ocean if we compare it with the number you just mentioned, Michael. And we believe it's a good first step, though, to bring Europe back to some sort of energy sovereignty for this most important future source of energy. And today, as we all know, we are depending on Asia, primarily on China, up to a level of more than 90%. And beside a strong business, we believe we can start with the own manufacturing of cells and modules. We believe there's also a strategic component in it, and now growing the supply chains, not only doing the cells and the modules in Europe, but also other components. I think that's a must. And if things go well, and if also the support is there from the political side, we can grow this to levels, gigawatt levels that will then contribute more than only 400 megawatts at the beginning.
Okay, thanks, Gunther. Maybe let's go to Christian. So, Christian, Wafer is one of the globally leading silicon manufacturers based in Europe. So, how's your view on this sector in Europe today, and in particular on silicon and your direct clients, the upstream-based ingot and wafer manufacturers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for bringing this issue up. Of course, Wacker is the largest polysilicon producer worldwide. We are providing high-purity polysilicon to the solar industry. And just to pick up Kerstin's comments on the green business case and the decarbonization effects we would like to achieve in the industry, you may know that polysilicon is already 100% electrified. So that's why we are depending on cheap electricity finally, and also on fast deployment. So means we need to add more and more renewable in very short time period, and also need to get more green PPAs running. What is of course mandatory for the entire supply chain here in Europe, it's not just cells and modules we have to look at, it's also ingot and wafers, because this is also a very crucial missing link in the solar supply chain, where we are supplying our polysilicon to. And unfortunately, there's just 2 companies currently in Europe being able to produce wafers and ingots, which are the raw materials then for Mr. Airfort's fab, which is providing leading edge cell technology. And for this leading cell technology, you need high performance ingot and wafers coming from high purity polysilicon, which we are supplying. So it's a very integrated supply chain we are looking at. And it's mandatory also from a strategic point of view that we rebuild this entire supply chain across all steps. And here, of course, the support is really wishful and mandatory from the European Commission, because 95% of ingots and wafers currently is coming from China. And our polysilicon, which we are supplying, we have 80,000 tons of capacity. We could easily cover the entire European market. We have to supply to China. And I think this demonstrates what kind of potential we would have in Europe to rebuild the PV supply chain also to make sure that the European Commission and the European society is finally achieving the targets we would like to have implementing the Green Deal. And so at the moment, I think with all the companies we have in Europe being very well positioned in their technologies, whether it's polysilicon, it's wafers or ingots, it's cells or modules, there's a unique opportunity now, but we have to act fast with all the forces we can join here in Europe.
Okay, thanks, Christian. Eduardo, so Soltec is Europe's #1 producer of solar trackers and the leading player also worldwide. So maybe you can just shine some light on also this segment and what that means for Europe and how the status is.
Well, fortunately, solar tracker sector is different from other parts, from other areas of the supply chain. Soltec is third largest solar tracker manufacturer worldwide, leading Europe and Latin America. But also the fourth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth and the ninth, and even more other manufacturers are European. So that's a good thing. You have to take into account that the solar tracker is a machine composed mainly by steel. It's a structure where you can install the solar panels and they can track the sun so that you can get up to 30% more energy out of the solar panel. And but it's not only the structure, it's not only steel. It also contains electronics, communication systems, and algorithms that implement artificial intelligence and that kind of things. So we think that we are in a very good position, even though the first one and the second largest manufacturers are American. It's true that the 50% of the solar tracker market is in the United States, so they play at home. But for the rest of the solar tracker manufacturers, they are mostly Europeans, and we are in a very good position worldwide. So my opinion is that even though we are doing pretty well, we still have to compete with other companies, with Chinese, Indian companies, and regulation. And of course, since we depend on raw materials, on steel, how that steel is produced, the CO2 emissions that it produces should be taken into account. And that's something that we would demand here when it comes to, make it better for the solar tracker European companies. We have to make a difference on it.
Okay, thanks. So if we look at maybe that goes to all the companies. If we look at the European sector as a whole, where are we leading still today? And is Europe's industry ready today from a technology standpoint to capture this big solar wave as a whole? If we look at the whole industrial chain, maybe Gunther first.
I would absolutely say yes, we are ready, because maybe despite a different perception, because we have completely lost the manufacturing to China, we have never lost the technological leadership. And I always like to combine this with a big thank you to the EU, to the federal governments, to these even state levels, because of their strong support throughout the last 2 decades when it came and still comes to R&D. So this is working perfectly fine. We have these strong networks and ecosystems in place in Europe, with all the strong R&D institutes, the industry being around. So the missing part is only the financing for now turning things into action and take the strong status of the industry. And I think we have mentioned a few examples already here. We have no reason to hide away in terms of where we stand technologically, and now taking it into own manufacturing, I think can just make the story fully complete.
Anyone else? Christian, Eduardo, regarding?
I have a question. I mean, can you give me a ballpark number? What you think would be required in terms of investment? I mean, I understand from you, Christian, on silicon, in fact, we're there. We don't even need to scale. On wafers, we only have the two companies. On the modules, we only have the 400 megawatt. And then there's the tracker business where we have 50% of the market, which I understood of the global market. How much do you think, in particular on the wafers and on the cells, we would need to invest to get there? I'm just quoting two numbers here. Portugal, in their recovery plan, which they just published, they are setting aside 610 million euro for the renewable supply chain. And the Czech Republic is setting aside 200 million euro for the renewable supply chain as well, where, you know, given that there's very little wind in the Czech Republic, sun is probably the most relevant element they would be investing in. I also want to say that I'm showing you my cup. These are the 14 industrial ecosystems around which we structure our work on the single market economy. And what we announced in the update of the strategy, there's one which is renewable energy, is one of the ecosystems. In the update of the strategy, we announced transition pathways for all these ecosystems to work with the sector on those. And these pathways will look at potential steps to take, the value chains, investment needs, and where to get the money from, and what type of regulatory support, and what type of also, you know, foreign policy support you would need on these. But when it comes to investment needs, I would be quite interested to see it. I mean, to have your number from your end.
So that's if I can start, that's a very good question. I'm happy to answer this. A ballpark number for what we all together organized under the SolarPower Europe are suggesting or requesting is that we implemented at least a 20 gigawatt manufacturing size for Europe. And the total capex involved without the silicon, and I think Christian is much better on answering this. But the cells, wafer cells and modules, we would speak about 5 to 6 billion euros investment. Comparing this with the total amount that's under discussion for the COVID recovery funds, that's a pretty small number in order to get to this level of manufacturing size.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't give a number because I honestly don't know. But what I know is that around 60% of the cost of the solar tracker is steel, but there's other components that are not steel, like motors, DC motors, fluid drives, and electronics. We do manufacture electronics in Europe, but the problem is that most of the components come from outside Europe. And when it comes to DC motors and fluid drives, there's no other option, because if you want to compete, the only way is by importing those components. I would focus on that. I would focus on motors, fluid drives, and also electronics. I think they are the most important components, so that we can say that it's a European 100% manufactured equipment. Steel, fortunately, is made in all over the world and in most of the European countries. So it's something that we can deliver and procure all over the place, all over Europe. And I think it's something that it's apart from what I said about CO2 emissions and how important introducing hydrogen on that could be. I think we're doing pretty well on that.
Maybe I would also add to Gunther's comment about the needed capex for building up a 20 gigawatt supply chain, starting with ingot, wafer, cell, modules at around 7 billion euro. That's just the capex or the investment you have to do. But what you also have to look into afterwards is, of course, to keep that running and competitive. And if we here look into industrial strategies from other regions, is it China, is it US, is it Vietnam or other Asian countries, they take care afterwards of the OPEX as well. So they provide very attractive frame conditions to their companies to survive in this fierce global competition. And this is also something which we have to acknowledge. So this means we need to have afterwards some attractive access to electricity, to infrastructure costs, to land and all that stuff, which is more in the authority, of course, of the member states. And here maybe the EU Commission could support that with looking a little bit more closer also in the state aid guidelines and modify them, so the member states are able to support their companies then also in the direction when running these capacities. Because otherwise we would spend a lot of investments, but then neglect the fact that we are in a global competition. And I think building up a supply chain in Europe, just to make to put it into the right perspective, it's not about turning back globalization. We are in global supply chains and we have to deal with that, but we also have to see or get comparable competitive conditions compared with other regions. That's mandatory.
Yeah. I was fearing that we would come to the capex OPEX point. As you know, this is a complicated issue. Let's put it that way. But we are currently reviewing our state aid guidelines. There's a big review exercise ongoing, and there was a lot of contribution also from the sector. And it's important for us. I mean, events like this to also understand well. We are certainly concerned about a level playing field. This is why the carbon border adjustment mechanism, we're currently in the design phase, is a point to bear in mind. We're looking at contracts for difference. We're looking at power purchase agreements, which goes into the next step, as you said, in this kind of innovative tools to address that. But I mean, maybe to Eduardo, would you be ready to pay 300 euro odd more for green steel if you were able to get it?
Well, we are now a public company since the 28th of October last year. And this is a question that is very repeated over our investors. They're always asking about how are we doing on ESG matters? Do we have any KPI to measure that, to measure the impact on how the steel is produced? And I think it's something that fortunately is changing, and people, investors, and money is understanding that it's not only about producing, it's also about producing in a sustainable way. So I think that if we, as Europe, lead that, we are going to take advantage. We are going to be different from the rest of the world, and we will be able to capitalize that. So I think that if we can offer that, eventually people will understand of the importance of that, and they will be able to pay. Because if you take into account if you consider the utility scale solar investing companies, they are mostly utilities too. There are also banks. There are also funds, international funds, and they are looking into that. They are looking into greening their pipelines too. So if you give them a way to do it, I think they'll pay for it. Not a huge difference, but at least a reasonable difference. You will pay for that. That's something that we are experiencing every day, that kind of questions, and it's difficult for us to answer because solar steel manufacturing plants are not ours. It's something that we outsourced. So even when we demand that to our suppliers, they cannot achieve it easily without hydrogen or other ways to heat and produce the steel.
Maybe
that's what we are looking into. Sorry, we're with the taxonomy. So as I said, it's the first gold standards that everybody will apply. With the taxonomy come reporting obligations. So there will be this transparency, and there will be new markets also to advisory markets to understand, to retrieve and structure that information that will be available at a huge scale. 250 billion of our next generation EU 750 billion we will issue in green bonds, and we're at the moment also setting a standard on green bonds. Obviously, when we collect money for green bonds, then the investors will want to know what we did with them. So we're now looking at everything, the EU budget, the whole EU budget, to be able to do the climate tracking. We have sustainability proofing on Invest EU. Now, this sounds like huge reporting obligations, but it's not, because we are trying to drive it all back to the same standards that we develop also around the taxonomy. So in the end, there will be a lot of transparency around this, and it will be European standards to allow us to reassure your investors.
Maybe I think that's a good point. It's also interesting to see, maybe we look at Meyer Burger, because I think their strategy on the one hand is really high efficiency products. So that's where they have their competitive edge, but also that they really focus on sustainability, using 100% renewables to produce renewables. And I think maybe, Gunther, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, and also share a little bit more details on your issues you had with financing, or that you are seeing in terms of when you're expanding in Europe.
Yes, so I can only echo what Eduardo already said. The importance of ESG that need to be incorporated into a company structure. So producing a solar module is, in our opinion, not enough, even though the product is per se a sustainable thing. But with intransparent supply chains, and also the sustainability, a view on how we can recycle in terms of circular economy. So these are all elements which we are taking very seriously. Not saying that everything is already in place, but we in addition to producing best panels for our customers, we also want to transform ourselves into a lighthouse of conducting a real green business. So that's at least the target and the goal, and we are working on it at our level best. I think we discussed already where Europe's industry stands. We have never lost that. If that has been a perception, then it is a wrong perception. We have never lost the competitiveness. We lost the manufacturing in Europe for several reasons. And I believe all the industry now needs is, of course, a level playing field that is fair, that enables the industry to rebuild an industry also in a sustainable way. To give you one example where we also need the EU's strong support is. There are no import tariffs for foreign solar modules, but there are import tariffs for non-EU manufactured components such as solar glass and to some extent also extruded aluminum. So a company like Meyer Burger, if we are not able to source components entirely in Europe, which is for the time being not possible because, as we discussed, the industry has relocated to elsewhere, we are even penalized because we need to pay import tariffs. So that's something that is, in our opinion, a no-go. So either there are tariffs on everything or there are no tariffs. But we also believe it remains to be a global world, and we are not against globalization, but it has to be fair play. On the financing side, there has been on the one hand, great successes achieved already by Meyer Burger. Otherwise, we would not open factories in a few days. On the other hand, this was until so far fully paid by our shareholders. We are currently working on the next phases funding, which is supposed to be a debt financing. For the debt financing, we are not really sensing the European Union, so we have been in discussions, but it's good that we have the meetings on discussions like the one today. So we believe if we could have better financing support also from the European Union levels, European Investment Bank, that would definitely be helpful. I'm not saying it's completely impossible without it, but it would help this strategic and relevant industry to grow faster to the levels that we need. And one instrument, of course, which could be very helpful because it has been applied to other industries in the renewable sector, would be an IPCEI, for instance. So we see this in the battery world, but also for hydrogen, and could also be an instrument for solar, beside loan guarantees and supportive funding, maybe also from the European Investment Bank.
What's your issue with the EIB? I'm asking this as an ex-EIB board member. In my previous job, I had that head, and also EIF board member. Does it take too long for you, or they don't offer the right products for you? Because we have examples of quite impressive financing now, also recently on solar. So, or is it your particular part of the industry?
Maybe it is the particular part of the industry. So we engaged in discussions with EIB already a year ago, and the initial feedback has been that there's no strategic interest in the sector. That this is supposedly not endorsed by the European Commission, which has changed now. But a year ago, this was the feedback from EIB. And that's one thing. And the other difficulty that we see, at least in our experience, is that things take way too long. So we are trying continuously to get in touch and to speak and to see what options might be available. The most recent response, which is maybe 2 or 3 weeks old, was that we will get back to you in about 9 months. So this was one feedback. So it is, I think, in times of the need of bringing this industry back for pure economical reasons, but also because of supporting the Green Deal and climate change, it has to go faster, in our opinion, because we are the industry. We have everything in our hands, a great technology, a brilliant ecosystem, and if all we need is financing, I think that should be actually the smallest problem in order to bring the industry back. It's too slow for the time being.
I note. I will dig deeper.
Just to give an example for the value steps we have discussed before, wafering, cell, module. In China, it takes maximum 12 months from groundbreaking to having the fab running.
Well, I mean,
I can tell you,
China. No. In some reasons, I'm actually happy about this. We've, from the policymaker point of view, for a long time, for decades, actually, we gave grants. So we had a process to give grants, and then that was it. With the Juncker plan, we started to think in a different way, to think how, here's the risk amount for a project, which is the slice we can take to make sure to use our public money, and then make sure that others come in to help. It's not that we 100% have to do it. That brought us into a complete different type of discussion. You know, how do you assess risk? How big does the guarantee have to be? And we focused obviously on loan products. Now we're even going into the equity space with the European Innovation Council Fund. So it's also a learning curve, and when you learn, maybe you take a bit more time as well. But it's clear, and I hear your message, that we have to be faster with our analysis, and we have to also be able to faster to see where does the public sector have to come in, either directly giving a grant or, you know, guaranteeing a part of the risk, and how does the rest of the project kind of can be set up. I take that point. And I think all of this would be really important to discuss when we reach out to discuss the transformation pathways.
No, definitely. We really appreciate actually the new or revised industrial strategy, where you actually put also the focus now on solar. I think that's absolutely the right step, and we are very grateful for that. And I think that's a big opportunity for all of us to make determining steps forward. If we all join our forces and are fast moving, I think that's crucial at this stage.
And if I may add to the question of European versus Chinese speed, Christian said it's taking maximum 12 months. So we started our projects in September and are opening the factories in May. So the industry can move very, very fast, funded through shareholder money. And so the target of Solar Power Europe to have 20 gigawatts of manufacturing in place by 2025, I'm not saying it will all be done by Meyer Burger, but it's absolutely doable. It's absolutely doable. And if everything that's required is structured, I think we can do this.
Okay, so I think we don't have too much time left, but I think I would like to touch one point finally. It's a little bit about our vision for solar manufacturing and the strategy to get there in the long run. So we have actually started recently together also with EIT InnoEnergy and some partners and launched a European solar initiative. To really get things going and to really facilitate and go towards that 20 gigawatt from under a gigawatt where we are now in terms of cell manufacturing and many other parts in the value chain. Christian, as the chairman of our industrial strategy workstream, can you maybe explain a little bit what's behind the ESI and what we want to do with that?
Sure. I think what already Kerstin nicely pointed out is that solar is more and more in the focus of the EU Commission. And of course, we from Solar Power Europe, we also wanted to support that and assist that. And so we founded together with other interested parties in the solar industry, this Solar Manufacturing Accelerator, where we have pulled together a pipeline of industrial projects which have high potential to be realized, and provided that to the EU Commission to give you information about what kind of projects are in the area, what kind of companies are there, seeking for financing, for support, to make this first step, and also to convince the EU Commission that this is a real potential industry, very important for the achievement of the European targets for the Green Deal. And so here, I think we also need to think about how can we facilitate getting investments. So I think we talked about already a lot about financing, but here it may be also an option to mirror the business investment platform from EIT InnoEnergy on the Battery Alliance. Maybe something is similar possible for the solar sector, which would be extremely helpful and also gaining speed in implementing these projects, which have been presented to the EU Commission. And finally, of course, the European Solar Initiative is also targeting on proposals how to make the framework for solar industry in Europe more easy. So these are the three main topics of the European Solar Initiative, providing projects to the EU Commission, making proposals how investments can be facilitated, and how should be a regulatory framework to facilitate these projects also running in future. And I think these are the three main topics we are currently pursuing together with Solar Power Europe and the Solar Accelerator we are doing together with other participants in the industry to present to the EU Commission a unified proposal to make you or to engage you more in this sector.
Okay, so let's maybe quickly do that, everyone, because we're really running out of time. Everyone, if we had a wish list to the Commission, so everyone has one wish actually he can state, and then maybe Kerstin can finally comment on that, and then I
signal. My name is not Santa Claus, huh?
Maybe Gunther first.
So my wish would be that the EU Commission, together with the industry, is really recognizing and acknowledging this industry to be strategic, and helping the industry to put the elements in place that we have discussed. So a fair level playing field for a sustainable and long-term successful business, helping on the market conditions and also the funding.
Eduardo?
Well, I have to say that around 60 to 70% of the value of a PV plant is comprised by other equipment other than the panels, right? Trackers, inverters, cables, civil works, engineering, all of that is already in Europe. So I think we should focus on manufacturing solar panels, wafers, ingots, that part that mostly come from China, as my colleagues said. And I also think that we should focus on other things in which we can lead, which is the hydrogen, as we mentioned before, because for storage, for long run storage, like winter, summer, and for many hours, that's something that could make a difference between us and the rest of the world easily if we put our eggs in that basket. And it will also help to decarbonize industries other than solar that are very difficult to decarbonize. So that would be my request. As you said before, that taxonomy would help. I think it's something that would be really appreciated by the sector, but also try to innovate in things like hydrogen and that can be easily accommodated with the current technology of solar plants. And I think that's the best bet we can do for the future.
Christian?
Yeah. I think today we have seen that there are many good ideas on the table. We see that the European Commission puts a lot of effort and support into this sector, a lot of strategies, a lot of good ideas. What I would like to see is how we can together implement that. Because just having a strategy is not enough. We need to implement the strategy, and we need to implement it fast. And whatever we can do from the industry to make the implementation happen in a fast way, we are full behind you and will do everything to make that possible. So it's speed.
Okay, if I may react, Michael,
yes,
not long. I'm a mother of 4 children, and I really know you have to walk the talk. So talk not only doesn't help. So I'm determined, and I can tell you my commissioner is determined to walk the talk. Now, why we insisted so much on the update on the green business case is really to make that happen. And solar is a key element to that. There are other elements to that, and there's no single one like Harry Potter. We need to work together, and that's where I see the value of the transition pathways to exactly identify, the different elements that we need: regulatory, funding, protection, level playing field. Also, when it comes to imports, we need to work on that together. And the pathways is really, it's a collaborative approach. Some of my colleagues, they call it co-creation, but I would say collaborative approach to do. And and in the end, that's my experience from coming from the money side. You can have as much money as you want. If you don't have the project, it ain't going to work. So having your project pipeline is a fantastic start to do this, and this is really what we have to put on our radar and to see how we implement that.
Okay, wonderful. I think nothing to add from my side. Working, coming together. I think that's a great slogan. And thank you to all of you. Thanks to the panel.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Michael. Exciting to see the promising prospects for solar manufacturing in Europe. Now, as we said in the beginning, driving sustainable change is not easy. Yet, we need you, with all your energies, to accompany us in this exciting challenge. During the break, our health coach, Lizzie, will show you breathing techniques to relax and come back to us full of oxygen for our next session at 10:45. See you there.